Hello and welcome to the second webinar in the series where we are discussing the importance of the candidate experience to businesses. My name is Scott Hayhoe and I'm Director of Solutions here at Questback, and with me today is Richard.
Hello, my name is Richard Adair and I'm a Solutions Consultant at Questback.
Well, I don't know about you, Richard, but I've been really looking forward to our discussion today. Are review sites killing your recruitment? Quite a dramatic title. Let's get us all onto the same page to start with. So by review websites, I mean the kind of places where employees, past, present and potential, so candidates, potential employees, can comment and importantly rate an employer as a place to work. And there's a few examples there on the screen. Perhaps the one we'll mention a little bit more today is Glassdoor.
Well, Scott, it's very interesting. So in preparation for our session today, I was doing some research on the internet, and I found some commentary that I wanted to share because I found it very interesting, and it really deals with the kind of pre-internet times, all those years ago, and talking about the candidate experience then compared to now. And really, the whole premise of it was the fact that the candidate had so little power compared to the companies because they really had no means of sharing their experiences and sharing their thoughts on bad experiences, whether that was the interview, the very early phases of recruitment of even application for the job. And really all they could do was talk to their friends, family, their own network, and really share that information with those particular people.
What are we talking about when we're thinking about a terrible recruitment experience? Is that sort of obvious things like the interviewer not turning up on time, or the recruitment manager not replying quickly enough to a comment, or getting back soon enough after an interview? Is that the kind of thing we're talking about?
I think it's that and a whole host of other things. It can simply be personality clashes. It can be the fact that you hold an organization in a very high regard, but then when you actually want to go and work for them, it's a totally different experience. And really what the internet has done, and what we're trying to convey in this slide here is, back before the internet, you had a very small community, a relatively small community that you would share with. Yes, no pun intended. Whereas today with the internet, it's about being able to disseminate that information quite literally anywhere in the world to anybody. And really, Glassdoor has reset this whole trend by providing a platform, or really this ability for people to pass on this feedback. And some interesting statistics to back this up is, according to Software Advice, 48% of candidates are likely to leave a negative review after a negative experience, and that's close to 1 in 2.
So I mean, before these sort of websites where it was, it is very, very easy to leave feedback, whether you're an employee or, more importantly, a candidate. Before that, I guess it's fair to say that the candidate didn't really have a voice, and they could only sort of, share their opinions with a few people, and that's about as far as it went. So, not only was the reputation of the company preserved, if you like, but the company itself wasn't really getting feedback to do anything about that poor experience.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's probably something that nobody ever really kind of got to grips with. It probably did happen, but nothing to the extent today. Some of these sites have really shaken up the industry, because not only do the candidates have the platform, but it's the prospective candidates that are reading these things. So that the 1 in 2 leaving the negative feedback, 1 in 3 telling people not to buy their products or services, and then 60% telling others not to apply for the company. So it's not just information about a bad experience at interview level. It's about the company, it's about their products and services, it's advice not to buy and recommend. And as we all know, we're all big reviewers, whether we're buying something or applying for a job. And it's really come to light, this fact that now there's this platform there, that it's not just people having a voice to tell everybody what's going on, but it's the fact that there's this whole other group of people that are sitting, listening to it, and possibly making informed decisions from that to not pursue an opportunity with this organization.
So that information is out there for all to read. One of the things that I found, as well as I was doing some research for this, and it's quite stark really, 69% of job seekers, and that's people whether they're in work or they're unemployed, 69% will not even apply to a company that has a poor reputation. And again, as you've mentioned, that poor reputation can be amplified on some of these review websites.
Scott, sorry, did you say even people that didn't have a job?
That's right, indeed. Wow. So, you'd imagine that people would be, would take a slightly warmer view of any opportunity that's available. But if a company has a poor reputation, then they won't even bother applying. And I think there's every opportunity as well for companies to, continue to make a poor reputation even worse, because as candidates go through interviews and face-to-face meetings and trials and they go on test shifts and all of those kinds of things, there's every opportunity there for the candidate to share their experience on these review websites, and therefore if the company is providing a poor experience at any one of these touch points, let's call them, a great chance to make a poor reputation worse. And so this kind of, this cycle of events keeps on running.
So maybe it's just obvious to me, but get there first. Why not, I'll start asking and engaging with these people before they feel the need to go out there and broadcast this stuff?
Yeah, and I think one company that was very open and honest about the impact of a poor recruitment experience was Virgin Media. A couple of years ago, they had a big recruitment drive. They had tens of thousands of people apply to work at Virgin Media, and many of those, of course, were customers of Virgin Media. Now, the effect of having not an optimal recruitment process meant that actually you'd be surprised thousands of those applicants actually cancelled their customer subscription. And you can read about this. You search for yourself on the internet. Virgin Media estimated that the cost to them of providing this poor candidate experience was around £4.4 million. So it's real numbers behind this. So as you were saying, why not establish a dialogue? I suppose I was wondering, is there something that perhaps employers can learn from that connection between the customer experience and the employee experience?
Well, I think you're absolutely right there, and we're seeing more and more of a trend now of treating candidates and employees as your customers and treating them the same. And it seems to be the organizations at the moment who are making a lot of noise in this space are the ones that see them like for like and really getting them involved and giving them these platforms. But this kind of harks back to my earlier days in CRM and complaints management. In one of the biggest takeaways and one of the biggest lessons learned I had in that whole experience was customers who complain do so because they actually care about the brand, the product, or the service that's being provided to them, and they want to see it get better. And that's why they're taking the time out of our busy lives to say, hey, this is wrong, and this is and possibly offer some reasons why and maybe how to even make it better. And I think this holds true very much for the people going through the recruitment process. They're there because they want a job, so therefore they want it to go well. And if it's not, they want the opportunity to be able to feed that back, to try and get it rectified and to try and fix it. But in so many cases, and some of the things that you were speaking about, really kind of point to the fact that people just don't really do this. And so all this gives the candidates the option to do is to seek out one of these sites. And that's not to say these sites aren't bad, absolutely not at all. But why not try and deal with this in-house before, say, your CEO comes knocking on your door and saying, hey, I've just been on this Glassdoor thing, what's going on?
So, I guess it's not surprising then that leading firms have been working hard, in the last year or so in particular, to create a positive candidate experience. But what about sort of gathering that feedback early on? What should companies do about that?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to start with the dialogue. That's the most basic thing. Start the dialogue and give people this opportunity to have their voice heard.
And you'd think that would be a really straightforward and obvious thing to do.
Isn't it?
Well, it is. But you know what? As few as 12% of companies actually ask for feedback during the recruitment process. And that's backed up by candidates as well. 78% of candidates state that they've not been asked for feedback. And the last number I want to share with you on this slide, which I don't know whether to laugh or cry, more than 70% of employers who have not yet seen negative candidate reviews admit that they've never searched online for them. So they really are sort of putting their heads in the sand, I think.
And I'd like to add one in there as well, just as we're on the statistics route there. And, again, something that stuns me was 60% of employers have read at least one piece of negative feedback about their applicant process. But what's really crazy, they're reading about these things, and it's way too late, because normally they're reading about this stuff on some of the sites that we've mentioned.
It's not difficult to ask these questions, is it? Let's face it, and there are some simple things as well you can get feedback on. So, would you still recommend our company as a place to work, having been for an interview, having chosen to drop out of the recruitment process voluntarily, something caused you to do that. What was it? What was it you didn't like? What was it you felt was wrong that made you want to withdraw from the process? Would you still recommend our products and services? So they're really straightforward questions you can ask in the process, and that can be incredibly useful. I think if you combine that with some other, let's say, smarter questions around perceived fit and engagement, you can really get to some incredibly valuable insight and information. If you ask candidates how they feel they fit with their potential boss, the organisation they're going to work for, the role they've applied for, and perhaps the team they're going to work with, you can get a real sense for, when they turn up, will they have increased job satisfaction because they're working with people they like, doing a job that they want to do with an organisation, and for a boss that they respect and feel that they will, they can work with, I suppose, in a simple sense. Often that leads to increased job performance and that all-important willingness to recommend products and services and as a place to work. So perceived fit is important, and if you ask this during the recruitment process, then you get early indicators for when people actually do join the business as to how they're going to turn up and turn on. And engagement is a clear indicator of that. You want people that when you recruit them, you want them to turn up and turn on. You want them to be motivated, you want them to be productive. So asking them questions during the recruitment process will give you an early indication of that. And a stark one for me, again, is if you ask about willingness to recommend as an employer and willingness to recommend products and services and compare those two, you can really start to understand, are people applying for all of the right reasons? For example, when IKEA opens a store, they have as many as 40,000 applications to work in that store. Are those people applying because they really, really want to work at IKEA or because they like the furniture? Sounds like a trivial example, but those kind of things really do happen.
I think that's very interesting. You've definitely got the old thinking cap going. But what I'd like to do is shift gears and show you and our wonderful listeners, how are we helping customers at the moment? And some of the things we're looking to do is to provide them with early warning signs of issues in their recruitment process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by looking at a dashboard in our Touchpoint solution. And what this dashboard is showing me and drawing my attention to are areas of things that we're doing very well, because it's also important to highlight areas that we're doing well for best practice.
Okay,
try and share that across the business.
Okay, so just take me through what I'm looking here. So down the left-hand side, I can see perceived fit, engagement, willingness to recommend, that I spoke about measuring and capturing feedback at different points on that journey. So as I was talking about interview, I was talking about candidates that had dropped out of the process, and also entry. So what's entry?
So entry is for people, it's always good to get a sanity check at a key touch point, and that's normally about the first week that somebody's been within an organization. So,
okay, so we want first impressions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, allow them to get in for kind of the first week and then really kind of gauge, how they're feeling, what are their thoughts and feelings compared to the interview process that they've been through. And hopefully there's some consistency and it's all positive.
Process across the top and those sort of smart questions.
Absolutely. Those are the ones that you highlighted. And we've coupled some in there to get that single NPS score. And the color scheme there is anything in gray is consistent. It's remained the same. There hasn't been a change. Anything that's blue means it's trending upwards. That's a positive. So kind of things to think about there, best practice. What are we doing right? And then how do we share that? And then anything that's red is actually trending down. So these are the things that we want to draw attention to see, okay, what haven't we got right and how do we go about fixing it? And
this is based on, I can see 4 names there under the employee filter. So these are 4 candidates, are they, or 4 employees that we've asked a load of questions. I say a load, I mean there's only 9 questions there, aren't there? So we've asked these candidates some questions on their way through, and this is showing what the results.
Yeah, and there's a couple more questions in there, but they're very short surveys, but they're at these key touch points. Okay. So you have the ability to look at individual level as well at, say, a team level. We're currently looking at a manager's view, but also at director view. You can start rolling this up to look right the way across organizations, and obviously your filters will change in there.
Very good.
The kind of things that we're looking at here, and to take a bit of an example, is if we look at organization, so in this perceived fit, the question that we're asking is, there is an excellent fit between me and the organization. We're asking people to rate it. So currently, we're trending at about 2.8. Ideally, we want to be about the 3 marker. But you'll see at the dropout, and dropout's quite an interesting one. I think we're going to spend a bit more time later talking about dropout, just to really kind of get a little bit of history on this and put this into perspective. But there's a real gold mine of information there from people who have voluntarily chosen to take themselves out of the process. And what we do is we've just sent them a quick survey to say, can you give us a little bit of information as to why you chose this? And as you said, we've asked those particular questions, we've got that feedback. And can you see that the organization scoring is a very miserly 2? So we're doing something wrong. At interview level, we're up about 2.8, getting very close to 3. And at this dropout phase, we're at 2. Whereas if we go across and see how we're doing at entry, so these are people, again, that have been in for about a week, and we just want to get some first impressions from them, it's gone up to a whopping 4.3 out of 5.
Out of 5.
We're doing something right. Now, what are we doing at entry that we need to be reflecting back in the interview process?
So we're doing something in week 1. We're explaining something to somebody about the organisation. So they've just joined, we're either explaining to them about the organisation, or when they just get to see the office for the first time or something like that. It's actually making them think this is the place that I want to be. But they weren't getting that impression during the interview phase, and therefore they dropped out.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And what we're going to do is we're going to now filter this down to one particular individual who we know was going through the process. And let's take a look at a bit more detail as to what was going on with our friend Tobias here. So Tobias actually started at interview level with a very low score and view of his potential fit or perceived fit within the organization. That didn't increase at dropout. If anything, it maintained the same. But if you look, his role, that actually went up. So he's really excited about the role, but he wasn't excited about the company. And if we look at some of his comments here, against some of these questions, he's actually taken time out to put into the text field, I think I could do the job, so hence you can see he likes what's going on about the role, but I'm not sure if this is overall the right company for me. So what's going on here? Something is not right in terms of how we're positioning the company. Is it we're not sharing our values and our views, or are we doing it in a wrong way and actually it's contradicting what we're actually trying to do, but it's giving people a very poor opinion.
So what would you do here? Would you just pick up the phone to Tobias and just ask for a little bit more information? Or?
Well, I think there's a couple ways that we can handle this. One is absolutely to engage with Tobias again, because he's taken time to fill out an interview to give us this information. So obviously that he is keen to talk, and it would be great to pick up the phone and maybe drill down into a couple of these particular focus points in more detail. But also, there's another big problem here. Internally, we need to address something. So what I would advise is coming up to our huddle up area area and start compiling an action list of things to do to start addressing this. So we could start by having an internal conversation where I could identify a couple key people that we could start engaging and ideating, how are we going to handle this, what are we going to do, and so forth. I think I've got a pretty good idea.
Okay, because maybe we're not the only people that have this recruitment problem.
Yeah, or maybe it's not so obvious what the problem is. So
right.
We want to start banding around some ideas, thinking it through, bouncing it off a few people, so to speak. But I think it's pretty crystal clear in my mind, we're not positioning the company properly. So you can see there's a company vision and values training going on as well. But more importantly, there's this improved company positioning during the interview process. So somebody else has also clocked onto this, and there's some work going on. We can see that it's been started. We can drill down into this task and see a bit more information about what's going on, who's involved and such. And what we could also do is start really promoting this internally within the organization and start, talking to Richard or maybe going to Richard's boss, start sharing this across the organization, looking for some best improvements. How are other teams and other areas addressing these issues, and what can we do to really fix this once for all? Because we are losing good people out of the process. So that was just a quick view and walkthrough of a little bit of the touch point solution, how quickly you can filter on some information and start getting to some of the critical points. So I think at this point, Scott, you were going to tell us a bit more?
Yeah, sure. No, it's very good, focusing then very much on the recruitment part of the journey. As you said, let's understand fit and engagement and willingness to recommend during interviews. So people who are still in process, let's talk to those people that choose to drop out. And then just as they've entered the business, let's get that week one kind of snapshot as well. I think, what's well documented is that poor recruitment, not only is it affecting the candidate directly and then the business reputation, etc., but it has a knock-on effect into when somebody has joined a business, their productivity and even churn. Again, it is well documented that people who have a poor candidate experience, maybe the company's oversold or the role is oversold or something's out of alignment. When they actually join the business and they go through initial training, they get going on their first project or their first assignment, whatever that happens to be, it suddenly becomes very, very clear to them that this isn't the business for them. They don't like their boss. They don't get on quite so well with their team, and the job's not quite what they expected in the first place. And so, they're either going to continue there and not be as productive, or in extreme circumstances, of course, they quit. And a lot of these issues you can identify during the recruitment process. So again, we focus very, very heavily on recruitment, but if you get things wrong during recruitment, they can have an effect. And we do know that many recruitment managers are actually measured. One of their KPIs is around year one churn. So this is, really helping recruitment managers not only getting people through the door, but getting the right people through the door who are going to be productive and they're going to stay with the business.
I think there was also an interesting point, Scott. Do you want to take just a quick minute and talk about dropout?
Dropout, yeah. Why is dropout here? I think just an example of my own, actually. When I was talking to Questback, I was also talking to another company at the same time, and the experience I had there actually changed me and has resulted in us having this dropout questionnaire. Because I spoke to the HR director at this other company. And we got on extremely well. There was really good chemistry there. The organisation sounded absolutely fantastic. The way in which she explained the role to me sounded great. And we got on very, very well, a real meeting of minds. So much so that she said, look, I'd love to put you through to the next stage. I want you to talk to the hiring manager as soon as possible. Can we do that this evening or tomorrow morning? And the following day, I had a 30-minute conversation scheduled with the hiring manager. About 2 or 3 minutes into that conversation, it was absolutely clear that my style of doing things and the hiring manager's style of doing things were very, very different. And I quickly realised that I couldn't work for this person for a variety of reasons I won't go into right now. So we went through the motions a little bit on the call. The call probably only lasted about 15 minutes. At the end of which I thought, well, rather than me sitting and waiting for an email some weeks hence from the HR director, I called her up and I said, look, very nice to speak to you yesterday. It looks like a great opportunity, but I'd like to withdraw from the process, please. And she said, okay, fine, thank you for letting me know. And I said, well, look, if you'd like me to go into the reasons why, give you some feedback, I'm more than willing to do so. And she said, oh no, that's okay.
That's incredible. So you volunteered to give feedback on the process, and she had no interest. So
that's right.
I take it she's one of the big numbers that we saw earlier that not
well,
interested.
You never know. I mean, if I'd been the fifth or the sixth person that week had said, great company, great role, I'm sorry I can't work for that manager, then that's something that that she could have picked up with the manager, maybe the interviewing style or the description or whatever it is. So again, you mentioned the word goldmine. For me, dropouts of people who drop out of the process like that for very, very good reasons, an absolute goldmine of information. So thinking about the entire journey does have a place in all of this, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I think from that perspective, what we're going to do is we're going to go in and look at that. So at the moment, I'm in as an executive, so I've kind of gone up a level. And what we're looking at now is that employee experience is the new word instead of journey.
Okay.
So it's starting at interview. We've also got entry, onboarding, because quite often people go through a couple of phases of onboarding. So any key touch point really in that employee experience can be brought into play. But also looking at things like resigning as well as exiting. Sometimes it's really good to get people's feelings and emotions at that exact time of resignation. And as you can see, we're looking at people at the moment who have currently exited the organization within the last year. So they haven't even been in the company within a year. And as you can see,
a lot of red on there,
a lot of red.
A lot of red.
So if I was an executive,
not good.
I would be quite concerned about this and looking at that. And as you can see, we have some filters here that we can apply, so we can look at things like gender. We can look at level, so we can start, look at this from the perspective of these, are these my super grads, or are these people in middle management? Are these senior management? What part of the organization do I need or want to focus on, and I can start looking at those results.
So can I get a high level view on this? Because as an executive, there's a lot of information here.
Sure, there's so many different ways that you could look at this information. A very nice one here is to be able to look at all of your particular regions and your particular offices.
So these are offices across the world, but they could be across the country or just across town?
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. You could have multiple offices in one location, or you could have, like this particular example.
Let's have a look at Italy then. You're hovering over Italy.
I am, because unfortunately Italy is the only one with a negative NPS score at the moment. So we can start focusing on Italy. We can see it's got a -28 score. But we can also then start drilling down into their trends over the time, so we can see how they've been performing over time. And as you can see, at one point it was looking quite good, but then consistently now we have been performing quite badly, and that's been consistent now for going on a good sort of 7-8 months.
So that's really cool. I mean, we all love maps, and I think I was counting. I think it took you 2 clicks to realise that it was an issue in Italy, and then actually drill down into what the issue is, and then you can get into some of the action planning that you were talking about.
And we've got the fantastic. But also the great thing there is you can see that actually some of the other regions are starting to trend the wrong way.
Yeah.
So it's not just Italy. They just happen to have a bad NPS score as well, but there might be some bigger issues to address there.
Fantastic. So questions. I mean, conscious of time a little bit. Let's have a look to see if we've got any questions that have come in.
I think based on time we can take 2, and I see there's one in here that's looking at the model, so the questions that we talked about. How robust is that model, and how do we handle the whole honesty thing, Scott? I think this is a very interesting question, one we get a lot about. How do we handle the whole honesty?
So by model, what we mean by model are those 4 questions on fit. So how well do I fit with the supervisor, organisation, role, and team? Plus those 3 engagement questions about how do I think, feel, and act, and the 2 NPS questions recommending a company as a place to work and as a place to buy goods and services from. Very well researched model. I read over 20 papers on the topic in creating that model. Very happy to point people towards that if they want to drop me a line, for sure. And I summarise them as well if you want to have a look at a short summary. In terms of honesty, of course, candidates in process will always paint a rosy picture. I love the boss, I love the company, I love the people I've met, etc. So there's always that temptation. But I think so long as you're clear that you're capturing feedback in order to improve the process, not just for them, but for everybody, and that the feedback will have no bearing on the decision to hire or not, then that will help. I think the other, this goldmine that we call voluntary dropouts, those people that pull themselves out of the process, they've got every reason to be as absolutely open and honest as anybody ever could be. And that gives you a real baseline, if you like, of honesty, and you can compare that on average to those candidates still in the process, and maybe subtract a half a mark for everybody in the process still, just in case they are being positive. So I think that's another reason why speaking with voluntary dropouts, voluntary withdrawals is really important. Another question, clearly somebody here is very interested, a recruitment manager by the look of it, very interested. How would they get going with Touchpoint?
I see. Yeah, there's also a reference in there to ATS and
ATS, applicant tracking system.
Yeah, absolutely. You got it there, Scott. So, most organisations will have some form of ATS, whether that's applicant tracking system or maybe even in a spreadsheet, as well as an HR system. And one of the real powers of the Touchpoint solution is the ability to go across those two solutions and really to span the entire journey that an employee goes through in their experience.
So we integrate with applicant tracking systems, we integrate with HR management systems. And the reason that's important is because this will really help you to automate the whole process here. So when you want to send questions out, surveys out to candidates, that can be automated. When you want to send questions out to people who've been with your business for a week, that's dead easy to automate because your HR system will say, here's when they joined, 1 week later, send them a quick survey and capture that information and then have a look on the dashboards that you shared with us.
I think really on the point of how do I get going on this, the Touchpoint solution is an out-of-the-box solution. The surveys and questions are in there, and it's a matter of switching on which particular touch points do you want to start with and use. So do you start with recruitment? Do we start just with interview? Do we go for the whole experience? But it is an out-of-the-box solution, and we'd be happy to talk to you in a bit more detail about that.
So people can get going really quickly. Just to wrap up then, I think three key takeaways for me. Number one, establish a dialogue with candidates and establish it early as well. Secondly, ask smart questions that really lead to actions. You want insight, you want to understand how people are thinking and feeling, how you can improve the process, and take action as a result of that, whether with the individual candidate or as an organisation to fix things for every other candidate. I think the last thing as well, drawing things together, is remember that a poor recruitment experience, a poor experience for the candidate could end up on Glassdoor, and it will do, and it probably still should do. It will be great if you have that early dialogue that you can start to understand some of that yourself. So of course it could end up on Glassdoor, or it could end up at your door instead or as well. So thanks for listening and watching. Thanks very much, and look forward to speaking to you again on a future webinar. Thanks very much.
Thank you.